Gerald, and thank you for the invitation to be here from Global Homeschooling the Education Exchange and for organizing what you have organized this morning. I appreciate it. So I'm here in Manitoba in the middle of Canada for those of you who need to visualize that in terms of where we are. Everybody has interesting backgrounds. Mine is a jersey that hangs in my office here at the Parliament in Manitoba. It's the Winnipeg Jets jersey. It was 6 weeks ago today that they played their last game, and so everybody's going through challenges and missing things, and certainly in Canada we're missing hockey. What I can't miss is cabinet, which begins in about 50 minutes, and so I won't be able to be with you for the whole morning and the whole presentation, but look forward to hearing what I can and maybe catching up later on the things that I miss. So this is, a unique opportunity, even though it is a difficult time for many, many people in the world and in Canada where I live. As the Minister of Education, I have certainly heard from parents who are now all collectively homeschooling in some fashion, how it's going. And there's, a spectrum like there is in anything about how it's going. Hearing a lot of good things and a lot of unique experiences, but also hearing a lot of stress from individuals who didn't plan to be homeschooling, to have their children at home. Added to that fact is that they're dealing with their own sort of personal challenges, whether that's a financial challenge, loss of a job, health stress, isolation, and now, of course, their children at home. And so a lot of them, and I'm hearing it in my office and in different places as education minister, are feeling the pressure to teach their kids. And social media, while it can be a great help in many things, often what shows up on social media can be the best of things that are happening in people's lives. And so I'm hearing from parents who are saying, well, we're seeing all these great experiences that other parents are having with having their kids at home and trying to do some schooling at home, and we're not having that experience. And so they're feeling guilt, a lot of them, and are expressing that sort of guilt that they're feeling because they're not able to do what others are. And so for you who've had a lot more experience and are leaders, of course, in the homeschooling movement, I think that there's an opportunity to reach out and to remind them that it's not all on them, that it's not all up to those parents now to become the teachers or the educators in one fell swoop, and maybe to relieve some of that pressure that they are suddenly feeling. But also then to remind them that while they shouldn't feel the overwhelming burden of this pressure, because of course this isn't something that they've been planning for weeks or months. This is something that was sort of sprung upon them, that they may never go through this again, which is what society overall is hoping for, that we don't go through a pandemic like this again. But within every difficult situation, whether it's a pandemic or something that happens within our personal lives, there are also great opportunities. And so I'm also hearing that from those who never expected to sort of be homeschooling, even in a crisis situation, who are saying, and I had a conversation yesterday with a parent on the way home. I was driving and we were talking, and he was saying, Kelvin, the opportunities that are happening now for me and for our children, and we're talking about things and interacting in certain ways, is really, really unique and very, very special. And I think that we need to remind those who are going through this to remember that and to look for those opportunities wherever they can look for those opportunities, because some very, very positive things can come from this experience as well. And then when it comes to interacting with government, so the criticism that I most often hear about government generally, not in times of a pandemic, but almost at every other time in the 17 years that I've been elected, is that government acts very, very slowly, and that government is very, very resistant to change. The institution of government is essentially structured that way. But now we're in a time where everything is operating almost exactly opposite. Everything is happening very, very fastly, very, very quickly, and government is doing things that are completely foreign and different to what government normally does. And I've certainly experienced that in my role in education and watching what's happening in other departments. So suddenly there's a willingness, and not only a willingness, but a desire to look outside the box and say, how can we now deliver programs that we might not have imagined 3 weeks ago, to deliver them quickly and deliver them in a different way. And I think that for leaders in the homeschooling movement, that opens up an opportunity, because now leaders in government are really looking for ideas and willing to implement ideas pretty quickly, far more quickly than they'd ever had before. We're also seeing that technology, and this is a demonstration of it, can bring new educational opportunities that didn't, well, maybe have existed for a little while, but maybe haven't been on the radar of government or government officials. And so that's important to remember, that we have these sort of unique opportunities. I would say to you, those who are in the homeschooling movement, that as you take these opportunities now, if you have the opportunity to interact with government officials, recognizing now the door is sort of open to ideas and a willingness to move on certain things, that to speak not just about the right of homeschooling. And I'm a big, strong advocate, our government's a strong advocate for the right of homeschoolers, of independent schools, really just of the right to have parental involvement and control over education of young people in our province and in Canada. And so we speak about the right, but that's not really what education ministers spend their time talking about. We almost never talk about rights in education as education ministers. When we meet together, we talk about results. Our language is about results. What are the results that we're getting in our K-12 education system? And I would encourage those who are leaders and homeschoolers to remember that, and not just simply, you know, advocate for the right to homeschooling, but talk about the great results that you're getting. How are your young people doing? And we know that they can do exceptionally well, and they are doing exceptionally well. And that it's a demonstration of how well it's doing. And some of the many of the young people who come out of homeschooling, to take that results-oriented focus into the discussion when you're talking about the rights of education. Because ultimately, as education ministers, that's what our focus is, and the rights will often follow the results in many different things. So don't lose sight of that homeschooling isn't just a right, it's a good education. It's a wonderful opportunity, and you're going to see that opportunity now being able to demonstrate it in this time. I know I was given 7 minutes, so I'll wrap up shortly. I wanted to also say that at this time, you also have a very unique opportunity to knock down misconceptions. And those who have homeschooled over the years, you will know what those misconceptions are. You don't need me to remind you of those misconceptions, but you know, you will have heard about, you know, well, students are socially isolated when they're homeschooled. They don't have the opportunity to be with others. Well, we're learning a lot about social isolation now, aren't we? And that while we are physically distanced from each other, we're not really socially distanced. And we are changing the terminology. We're not supposed to say now that we're social distancing, we're physically distancing, because we don't want to be socially distanced. And in fact, I think there are some social connections that are happening maybe more strongly than they've ever happened before, even in a time of isolation. And so I think some of that misconception can be torn down to say there are so many ways that homeschoolers and their students can be connected and are connected at this time, but then at every time, every normal time when we come back to a normal way of living. And then to remind leaders that is happening all the time within homeschooling. There are broad-based networks, and that there are resources that have been built up and that exist already within that network, and that can be strengthened, that can be improved. So there's this really great opportunity, I think, as well, to bring down some of those misconceptions. So sort of to summarize, I would look towards the parental part of it, and to help those who are struggling, but also feeling guilt that they're not able to do this as well as they see others doing it. Remind them that they were kind of thrown into this. This isn't a planned homeschooling environment, and that there are others out there to support them and to help them. But within that, to look for those unique opportunities. What are the things that your kids are going to be able to remember from this? Can you build those stronger connections that you might not have been able to do at a time when your kids weren't at home and you were too busy within your job? Because a lot of that is happening, but I think you sometimes have to actively look for it. And then speaking to government leaders, we're in a unique time. Things are moving quickly. Government's willing to think outside the box, which is a criticism we get. We often we don't do that. So consider that, bring those solutions to government. Do so in a way that focuses as much about results as it is about rights. because government wants to hear about results and not just individual perceptions on rights, and then break down those misconceptions, because that opportunity exists now, I think, more than ever for homeschoolers to understand that, hey, this is not only is a right that has results, but can actually be done in a way that we never maybe had realized before, or never really put our minds around. So thank you again for letting me join you. Happy to take any questions or just hear some comments. And thank you for the work that you're doing all the time, right? I mean, we know that homeschooling is a valuable part of our education system, but sometimes it's a little off the radar. But now it's been thrown right on the radar, because everybody's become a homeschooler in some form or fashion in many of our countries. And so thank you again, and look forward to hearing any comments you have.